It is 9:30 on a Thursday night, and you are tuned in to Beltway Radio and Beyond, which can mean one and only thing. This is ChipChat. Welcome to ChipChat, everybody. I'm Chip. Who are you, Tez?
You just told him, buddy.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It's been a tumultuous time since the last time I was with you.
Yeah, you were on assignment.
I was on assignment in lovely San Francisco, right before the festivities that happened last weekend.
There were many.
Pick and choose whichever festivities you.
Also, you survived air travel, which I hear is getting a little risky these days.
Yeah, it was, the flight home was terrible, but it's really at a point where as long as it gets up in the air and comes back down, you've won. So I have no complaints.
It's going to come back down. It's just
that's the point. It's always going to come back down. There's never been a plane that's went up and never come back. But yeah, that it lands safely is it's a godsend because you never know. And I have a sneaky suspicion that there will be 5, 4, 3. No, I don't know. I feel like I could count down to the next mishap in the air, but it's okay. We got our best people on us, and the courts will save us.
Sure. That's great. Okay. Welcome to a special edition of Chip Chat. This week we do have a guest. Her name is Allison Foster, and she writes
books have a guest.
For nerds to read, because books are for nerds. Also, speaking of, this week, Elon and the Muskrats keep shredding the federal government. Argentina has decided to challenge America to a crazy executive rap battle. And the kids are becoming lawyers, not because it's fun, but because they have to. Hooray! Yeah.
Fun show.
We've confronted this several times. Somebody asked John Oliver, is it easier to do your show when Trump is president? And he said no. He would rather not have that. We would also rather not have that.
So many benign stories we could talk about. So much fun things we could be focusing on.
We do have one or two fun things in here.
That's fair.
Including some stuff about KFC. Also, I think we have a Tez Talk this week, right?
Yeah, not fun. They're never
not
fun.
It's fun.
I guess it is fun. It's from those dirty people at the AP.
Right. Those ones that don't know how to read a map.
Yeah.
Or do know how to read a map but don't know how to read a new map.
Yeah.
They don't have a Sharpie.
Nah.
All right. Anyway, do you have a word?
God, I mean, at this point, I feel like they should just be just an endless amount of words out there. I have a word.
Okay. I've got one. So sit back, grab some
flags.
It's fire hose time. You're listening to the best show, the only show, Chip Chat on Beltway Radio and Beyond.
Sweeps.
Chip Chat here on Beltway Radio and Beyond. I'm your host, Chip. With me is Ted.
What's popping up?
All right. You want to do some interviewing?
Yes.
All right. Allison Foster is the author of 2 books, a short story collection, Heart Attack Watch, and the 2014 novel God is an Astronaut, which premiered earlier this month at the DC Independent Film Festival as a feature film. She studied creative writing at the University of Michigan and received an MFA from George Mason University, and she now lives in the DC area with her husband and son. Allison, welcome to Chip Chat.
Welcome, Allison.
Thank you guys for having me.
Okay, so we want to get to your book and writing stuff in a second, but the very first and most important question is, how are you feeling after beating Ohio for the 4th time in a row?
Pretty good, I would say.
It feels great. How do you feel about Ryan Day getting a 7-year extension so we can probably continue whooping him every year?
It's awesome.
That's what the show is.
Go Blue.
Okay. Thanks, Des. Okay, so let's get on to the actual stuff. God is an Astronaut is a book written in a fairly unusual form. Can you tell us about how you got that idea and how hard it is to write that way?
It's actually very hard to write that way, and sort of like harder than I realized it would be when I started writing the book. I just, I've always really liked the epistolary format. That's what the letter writing format is called. And I just kind of wanted to do an updated version of that. Obviously, like, people don't write letters anymore, but like, particularly when I was in college, I wrote like a ton of emails. I guess that's kind of even like, that's now like gone away because people just do texting. But like, I used to write all these emails to people, and that was kind of like the story of my life. So I just kind of wanted to like do a novel in that form and see how it happened.
So just to catch everybody up, the email thing, the book is written like there's no narrator, right? It's just it's just you're reading email, but you're only reading the one direction of the emails, right?
So it's all the emails going out, right, from one person, but not the replies.
So how are we supposed to figure out, I guess we can just sort of like envision or imagine what the replies are, or is there some way to sort of deduce that, or are you leaving that for the sequel, or like what is that?
Sure. Yeah, there is always, I always tried to structure them in a way that you can sort of see what's coming back. And I kind of liked like leaving a little bit of a gap for the readers to fill in. But I always tried to make it clear, like, you can get a sense of like what's being replied back to, like, through the emails. That's definitely there.
Because there's like a real hacky way to do it of like, oh, and to reply to your last one, yes, I am thinking about, whatever.
Right.
So are you gonna do a sequel where like we're seeing the other side of these and then see if anybody was able to think it up and get it right?
I've actually been asked that question. People are like, are you going to write a book with like it's all the replies in it? That would be an interesting project, but no, like I have like moved on. I have like another like sort of novel in the pike. I've like left those characters behind. But if somebody else wanted to take that up, I would actually love that. We could like sell our books like together. So that invitation is out there if anyone wants to take up the challenge.
All right, great. Well, so we're going to ask you about the new project soon since you mentioned it, but hold on to that. So, this is a sort of on-topic question here, but the story is about a dull federal employee at NASA, right? Like that's who she's a Fed, right? Characters. And did you ever think that writing about Feds would turn into like a horror genre?
So she was actually not a Fed. She is she's a scientist working. The book is set in Ann Arbor, so she's actually a botanist working at the University of Michigan. And her husband he works in a space tourism company. And so this was like before the whole Elon Musk SpaceX thing started happening. It actually feels sort of weirdly and before the shuttles were like blowing up from SpaceX and whatnot. So that turned out to actually be a little bit sort of prescient of that particular turn of events. So yeah, they're not Feds, fortunately.
It's related, right? Like that they're sort of dealing with I don't know, I'm just sort of like thinking about that it isn't meant to, that those kind of jobs aren't meant to feel exciting.
Right.
And now they feel scary.
Right. For sure.
So, if you're a scientist, right? Science is illegal now. So, what does that feel like?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, one of the things I talked about, so parts of the film were actually filmed at SpaceX. And the director and I talked about how the age, like the average age of the SpaceX employees is very young. It's like in their people in their 20s. And he was like, the level of just, inexpertise going on at that place. Like you just walk in and you're like kind of, you feel like kind of anything could happen at this place. And that is like obviously definitely relevant now, not just to people in SpaceX, but like various other people coming into the government, now doing God knows what.
Some of those same people are the people who are now having access to all of the data and all of the everything, I guess. I don't know what to really call that.
Yeah.
Just waddled out. Like
to try to bring this back maybe into like, a little happier part of the interview.
Ask book nerd questions.
Well, I guess Allison, what my question was going to be, what are your like earliest memories of like writing? Like it obviously doesn't have to be like early on, but like I guess those first like where you're like, oh, I enjoy doing this. And I guess a follow-up question, when was the first time someone was like, you're really good at this, you should continue on? Because I feel like a lot of writers have like a person who's like, they keep doing this, you're really good at it.
Sure. Yeah. So I think I've always wanted to be a writer. Like I've always loved books. I remember as like, how old was I? Probably in like 5th grade. I wrote this because I was very into like the Little House on the Prairie books. And so I wrote this entire like 100 notebook pages, not like tight pages, but like book that was basically like people that were out on the Oregon Trail. And every chapter was like some harrowing experience, was like some kid was getting menaced by a bear, like falling down a well or whatever. And I was like really into that. And then, my 1st grade teacher actually, encouraged the writing. Like she saw that I was interested in it. And so I was living in Arkansas back in the time. And Arkansas, I'm sure this program does not still exist, but like they had this program where the teacher could take 2 kids during the school day and just like leave the rest of the class with the sub. And then we went and listened to this kid's writer, like give a talk about being a writer and what that was like. And I still remember that. I was like 6 or 7 or whatever. And I still remember like going to hear this guy talk about like how he came up with his ideas. And then we like got to go out to lunch and it felt like this very like special sort of thing. She was Mrs. Hammonds was her name. And I still remember her. She was like the first person that was like, you're good at this. Like you should do it.
Wow.
Now,
so awesome.
not to take your skill level, into consideration at all, but being a great writer in Arkansas is probably a bit easier than say like, one of the states that can read. So
it's true. It's true. Maybe the bar wasn't very high.
It's like, oh, that one can start squiggles into words.
Right. Sentence. Period.
Yeah. Quick, get out while you can. Alex, he got up and out, left all the Arkansans behind, man.
I know. Yeah, seriously.
Do you think that creative writing, like I don't read fiction hardly at all, as evidenced by like my hackneyed version of asking you questions, but I only, I'm mostly reading newspapers and books, or not books, but like magazines and things that are nonfiction. I almost kind of have no concept of like how I would create a story of somebody that isn't real. Like I would only kind of borrow stories. I wouldn't bother with it, honestly. If my kids are like, tell me a story, I'm like, I'm just going to tell them like a thing that I know happened in history. I wouldn't know what to do. How do you do that? How do you come up with like stuff out of thin air?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, with God as an Astronaut, that actually came out of, so I was like working in the National Geographic Library at the time, and I was like processing the books that were coming in. So a book came in that was called The Space Tourist Handbook. And it was just about like space tourism and like what it's like and like, sort of like zero gravity and that sort of thing. And like how people deal with that. And then I was just like, that's so weird. Like that's such a weird environment to be in. And then like, what would it be like if you were like a person that was not trained to be an astronaut, and then you just like went up in that environment? Like, how would I feel if I were in that environment? And the whole thing sort of like spun out from there. And then I was like, well, who would that person be? And I guess she's like a scientist, and how does she get up in space? So it's sort of like piece by piece. There's always like some little spark, and then you kind of just start building on it from there.
It's crazy. I guess I could try it, but it would be
You have
really
an imagination.
Short. I don't do that.
You don't do that? That's interesting. Yeah, he doesn't. Okay, yeah.
Well, I don't like imagine other worlds or other things or other people. I ponder all day, but I don't imagine. I ponder things like, all right, this is going to be bad. I ponder wiring diagrams and like ways to recapture energy in building systems and stuff like that. I know it's very boring, but I've never like wondered, like I don't even wonder what like Illinois looks like. I don't even care. Like I've never even bothered to think about anything that isn't just in my immediate vicinity. So I have no imagination. Sorry. That's why I'm asking her.
No. I feel like there are two different types of people, and there are people that like get fiction, and then people that just don't. And if you try, like, if you're a fiction person and you try to explain, like, it's like I remember having this conversation with my roommate who's like super smart, but was just like not into fiction, and she was like, but fiction isn't like about anything, right? Like it's not like, what is it about? And I was like trying to answer that question. I was like, I mean, it kind of is about things. Like it's about like falling in love or betrayal or like, you know, like what it's like when someone you love dies, or like, I mean, it's about something, but it's not about it in the same like concrete way as like something that's nonfiction. So I feel like it is. It's kind of like it's something people either get or they don't get. Maybe it's like a brain type thing or something. I don't know.
Like I feel caught in the middle of this because I really want to go back to reading fiction, but I just keep reading all this tragic nonfiction and stuffing my mind with it. But as a kid, like I enjoyed fiction books, and I just have not been able to like sit down. And the people have given different recommendations, like I guess like historical fiction, but I feel like I'm trapped in the middle of this where I want to read fiction, but there's so many things that are in nonfiction that I gravitate to more. I don't know why. But.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot going on right now, you know, so it's like, I guess you either escape it with fiction or you're just like, I have to like deep dive into this and, you know, forget the fiction.
Yeah. I'm not going to solve it.
So, but like, fiction exists, right? Because like I'm aware of it. I like The Simpsons, for example, or you know, King of the Hill, but these things become worlds where like the people in them are real to me, and so it's not that like I'm imagining what Homer is like in space. I know Homer's been to space twice. I know exactly what it's like for Homer to be in space, and it's a thing that like just seems like, yeah, there was this time that Homer went to space and he had to eat potato chips to save the space station. So it becomes nonfiction essentially. I see it and then it becomes real, and then it's like, okay, I guess that happened. Is that how fiction works?
Yeah, kind of, I guess. I mean, like, if the person is writing it well enough, then it does become real. Then it's like, you know, like, I feel like stories that have been around, like really famous ones, like Moby Dick, like, I don't know, like pick one. There's lots of famous, but they're like kind of, they have this reality to people because like so many people have like imagined them into being, kind of the way, I guess, like you see Hope, like somebody's created that and then like made it a thing.
Like, because wouldn't like something like The War of the Worlds be something like
right?
Right. Didn't it? I'm not, granted, I guess the radio aspect of it, but I'm sure people read it and it also like invoked this type of emotion in them, and obviously hearing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I had somebody once try to tell me that Pooh Bear was just a bunch of stories and that he didn't really exist. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Clearly, Pooh and Piglet and Rabbit, they're all very real. I mean,
Robins.
Right.
Christopher Robin definitely exists.
Right. The story is so compelling that it's like it's made it into a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then I don't read fiction ever. I've never read fiction. It's only just history books about bears. Okay. So your book got made into a movie. we want to know what was that like? What was the optioning price? You know, is it like in the movies where like a guy with a big cigar shows up and he's like, I think you're gonna make $1 million, kid, and then he just like hands you a check and or how does that work?
No, so that is exactly how everyone thinks it works, and it is not like that at all. So I have like my experience, and then there's kind of like maybe sort of other scenarios. I think the first thing about like optioning your book as a movie is like, I think it happens a lot more than people realize, but like 99% of the films don't get made, right? Like somebody comes to you and they're like, we want to buy the rights to your book and we're going to make a movie, and they pay you some money, but then like, you know, the director loses interest, or like they can't come up with funding, or they get an actor that they're like, yes, this actor's going to be in it, and then the actor drops out, and so then the film doesn't happen. So like, I think it's pretty like not super common maybe, but like a lot of option deals happen, and then you never see the movies because they just never get made. With mine, what happened was I had a director that wanted to make this, like he'd read the book, he liked it, he was interested in it, he wanted to make it into a film. So he reached out to my agent and he was like, you know, we want to make this book into a movie. We have funding for it. It's definitely like it's going to happen. And they did not pay me a huge amount of money. They actually paid me a fairly small amount of money to buy the rights, but the deal was like, they're going to make the movie, and then if they sell the movie to a distributor, then there's like more money down the pike. So my agent reached out to me and said they want to make a movie, and I was like, that's great, that's awesome. So we signed a contract for it, and the contract we signed was in February 2020. Like that's when we actually signed it, and then like everything shut down. And I was a month later.
Nothing happened. It was fine. Everything was great. Yes.
And I was like, okay, like, I don't know what's going on with this thing. Like, I'm not sure if it's still going to happen. And it's sort of time passed. And like, I would periodically hear things like, it's like things are still moving, like it's going to happen. But then I kind of forgot about it, to be honest. I was not involved. Part of the contract was like, I was not involved. Like I did not write the script. Like I did not have any creative control over it. Like the director took it and wanted to make it his own thing. And I was like totally fine with that. Like I had a kid and I was like, had a day job, and I was like, I don't have time to like work on a movie on top of everything else. So he was working on it. And then like in January, they were like, this movie is done. It's coming to the DC Film Festival. Do you want to show up for the premiere? And I was like, that's great. That's amazing. Like I hadn't seen the film. Like I didn't know. I was like, is it good or is it bad? Like this is kind of nerve-wracking. Like it could be terrible, right? But yeah, I went to the film festival. It was on February 12th. And the director actually like sent me the film beforehand. I was like one of the only people that saw it before the premiere, because he was like, I always like to writers to like see the film so they don't have to just like walk into the premiere and then be like, oh my God, what was that? You know? So I did get to watch it once before the premiere, and then I went to the premiere where like everybody saw it.
And so, it was good, huh?
I did. Yes. I really liked it. He did a really nice job. You know, it's like an independent film, so it's not like big Hollywood, like super high product, but he did a really nice job with it. I thought, and I really liked it. And I hope other people like have a chance to see it and like it. I think it was great.
Did your copy say for your consideration?
Yeah, right. the Oscar thing, right. Charlie.
Yeah. It's super cool.
So do you think that you're going to keep writing books like this, or do you have more Hollywood aspirations, or you know, what's the next thing that's going to come out?
I mean, I would never say no to Hollywood. I am like finishing up another novel now. I'm hoping to have it done a little later this year. It is kind of similar, I guess, in the sense that it like also has, I wouldn't say like a sci-fi angle to it, but maybe sort of like speculative fiction, sort of that combined with like some family drama. I guess maybe that's the combination that I really like. Like I do like the sort of sciencey element, but also like the human element. So that book does sort of combine those two things. kind of the way that God is an Astronaut did.
So, assuming that you are going to write another movie, just sort of thinking, do you think you might need a couple of dashing radio hosts to be side characters, sort of like a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern kind of side quest thing?
Yes, 100%.
See?
Shameless, Allison.
I'm going to get you guys in.
Shameless. You couldn't go for a character in the book. You couldn't even go for a character in the book.
No. I'm no good in a book. What am I going to do?
You'll be in someone's imagination. Someone who they will imagine you in your.
I wouldn't wish that on anybody. What are you talking about here?
I can write you in. It's still a work in progress. Like, it's not finished yet.
I was thinking my favorite question that I ask all the writers, like that everybody who comes on here. I was like, do you find the process of writing lonely?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's very like you're just staring at, it's like navel gazing, like to the nth degree, right? You're just like staring into your psyche, which can actually be like, you can see why writers go crazy, right? Like it's, right. Oh my God, it's probably like sort of amazing. More of us aren't totally nuts. Yeah. So I have a writing group. Like, I feel like that's like having some sort of community, because otherwise, yeah, it's a very kind of lonely process.
I forgot who the guests who mentioned that they had a group as well, but you're the second person who mentioned that. Yeah, I have a group. I'm blanking on who it was.
I think Nora Shalloway said she had a group that she worked.
Interesting to hear that over and over again, because bringing in a community part or into it seems to be very important.
Yeah, she writes a lot of like YA novels and other stuff, and so I think she mentioned that also because she does a lot of research for her books.
Okay. Yeah.
Ahead of time. So I think she was talking about that process made it. But yeah, she also took that same question and said similar things of like, it is introspective to say the least.
Yeah. And I mean, writers are very like, well, maybe they're very insecure. So you like write something and you're like, is this brilliant or is this crap? Like, and you like need somebody to talk you off the ledge. Cause like half the time you're like, this is brilliant. And then the other half you're like, this is crap. So like, you need somebody to like ground you and, like point out the weaknesses, but also be like, yes, this is like, you're going down the right path. Like, this is the right, like, it's all good. Writers need that.
You see, Tez, you shouldn't just point out my weaknesses. You should occasionally tell me when I've written a good joke.
I do that often. All right?
Yeah. No, you ring the bell. That's all. Okay. Before we get you to play Tez's brand new game,
can't wait.
We do want to ask two more questions. One, what is Oprah really like? We assume everybody who writes a book gets to meet Oprah. And then how can people buy the book /
I have not met Oprah, sadly. I know, even though the book was like on the list, I know. And I would love to meet Oprah. I'm sure she's lovely. Yeah, you can buy the book on Amazon. There are like copies available there. Yep, there it is. Yeah. So,
and where can we see the movie? Like, is it going to come out or, like besides the film festival?
Yeah. So the movie is like on tour, like it's going to be going to some more festivals. And they're still sort of working out the exact schedule for that. I think the hope is that, so if you happen to be in like LA or New York or possibly Austin, they're looking at several different places. I think you could see it there. Otherwise, I think the hope is that the film will get picked up by a distributor, in which case you'll hopefully be able to stream it at some point. So whichever platform would pick it up, you'd be able to like watch it via that.
You don't want to slide us your bootleg copy, your preview.
I think the director might kill me if I did that. He was like, "Don't, this is for your eyes only." So I have to like sit on it, at least for now. So
all right, tell him, wink, wink. All right, Tez, do you want to explain this incredible game that you've thought up?
Well, this game is the basic game, right? It's 2 lies and the truth, but we're doing book titles.
Okay.
So we'll read off 3 book titles, and you'll just let me know which one you think is the true book title.
Okay.
You should explain what the frame of reference here is.
And there are, some publishers out there like Bloomsbury that puts out great books, right? Some publishers like that, and then we have other ones out there, that publish some, sometimes on the fringe type of books, like maybe the builder, the role of Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia as a leader in world peace. Places like that. They might publish a book like that. And that's a real title, right?
That's a real one. Okay.
That's a real title. All right. So, Allison, ready for the game?
Okay, I'm ready.
Here we go. Okay. All right. We have Badman Bannon, Steve Bannon's travel across Kingston, Jamaica.
Oh, no.
All right. And then, so that's one there. Twilight of the Shadow Government, How Transparency Will Kill the Deep State. And our third option here is Cash Rules Everything Around Me, A Journey from the Fringe to the FBI.
Very fitting because he was confirmed today.
Okay. I really want the Bannon one to exist.
Yeah.
But I think is it the second one? Is that the one?
Second one, ding, ding, ding. Yes, Twilight of the Shadow Government. How Transparency Will Kill the Deep State.
That's too bad.
Okay, there you go. Right. That's that one. Okay. All right. Let's go. We'll go on to round number 2 here. We have Flying for Peanuts, Tough Deals, Steep Bargains, and Revolution in the Skies. All right. So there's one. We have Kufis and Yarmulkes, Self-Hate Stories by Herschel Walker and Stephen Miller. And we have South Africana Musk, Dutch Natural Deodorant Recipes.
Okay. There are so many good ones here. It has to be the first one, right? The Flying for Peanuts. That has to be the real one, right?
That's the real one.
Okay.
You wanted one question. We'll just get the last one out of the way here. This one is brilliant. This is a tricky one here because they're all the same title. So it's just the subtitle here that we got to go with here. All right.
All right.
That Day in Dallas, Jimmy Johnson Traded Me. That Day in Dallas, Lee Harvey Oswald Did Not Kill JFK. That Day in Dallas, Look at That Way He's Gone, an NBA star's departure.
I don't know. The second one?
The second one, yes. There you go. 3 for 3 there.
Yeah.
There you go. You won the inaugural game. You probably will never play again.
The voice of anybody from ChipChat on your voicemail? Machine?
Right.
Yes. Wow, that's great. This is the highlight of my day here.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we do know it's a school night, so we don't want to keep you too long. We do want to tell everybody where they can get the book, or even just follow you, or stay in touch with what you've got coming up. So if you want to plug some stuff, now's a good time.
Sure. Yeah, you can look for the book on Amazon, and I have a website, which is just my name, AllisonFoster.com. So I'll be updating it as sort of other stuff happens. So you can look for me there. Great.
And we will link to that when we post these clips. The game show is fantastic. I can't wait for next week. So you've now actually roped yourself into actually having to contribute to the show every week.
That's tough choices and Amish romance.
I'm there for it.
All right. We're going to take a break. Allison, thank you so much for joining us. We really
thank you, guys. This was so much fun.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Listening to Chip Chat on Beltway Radio and beyond.
Books.
Everybody wanna walk away sometimes, and some believe they can fly. Either way, coming down is still a hell of a ride. If you can feel your heartbeat, you're not done yet, you can't be. If it hurts, it's work, and there's love enough for you and me. If the world is made out of love, then a heart can change it, anyone. I was nearly there when you shared your cup. You're the proof to me there's love enough. Everybody wanna walk away sometimes, and fools believe they can fly. Either way, coming down is still a hell of a ride. If you can feel your heartbeat, you're not done yet, you can't be. If it hurts, it's work, and there's love enough for you and me. If you can feel your heartbeat, you're not done yet, you can't be. Just keep going, there's love enough for you and me.
All right, welcome back to Chip Chat here on Beltway Radio and Beyond. I'm your host, Chip. With me is Tez.
What's poppin', y'all?
That was, I don't know who that music was.
That
but it
was
pretty cool.
the Midnight with Heartbeat. It's from an album called Heroes. Hold on a second. Let me put myself in the image. There we go. Hi, folks.
Good.
There's Brian.
This group I found like a couple years ago. Their big single from this album. I'm trying to remember what it was first. I just fell in love with it like really instantly, and I played it like to death. It's called Heart Worth Breaking, and I played on the show before, couple when it first came out. So and I liked it. So I figured since you guys were talking about God as an Astronaut with Miss Foster there, I figured it's like, you know, I remember like, yeah, the this album was kind of like had that space inspiration. So I figured it's a good
Look at
thing
you
to put out there.
producing.
But before you
yeah.
guys could go to your thing, I have a nice little Valentine's for you guys.
Oh,
Nice little Valentine's card.
Scary or gonna be great or
Yes, this will be
combination
great.
of
Actually, it's I got it from the White House.
Okay.
Oh no.
Yes.
No.
So, ladies and gentlemen, here's your
No.
Valentine's to Chip
No, we can't
Chat.
platform this.
Boom. Please read.
Roses are red, violets are blue.
Come here illegally and
They
we'll
will
deport you.
This is a real thing.
This
This
real.
was on.
This is real.
Yes, this was real. That was on
That was
their
real.
official Instagram the day it posted. When I first saw that, I was like, my sister sent it to me, and I thought this was a joke until I saw the check mark from the White House. And I'm like, are you kidding me? There are like you guys are saying, there are kids in Elon's department. There are kids in the White House. These are kids. I showed it to a friend of mine. When he seen the picture, I thought it was a good joke. Really was. It was funny until you see the check mark and where it came from. And I was like, oh God.
Childish, man. Like Trump was trolling Canada before the hockey game tonight. He's like, yeah, well, you know, we're going to take you over anyway. It's like,
oh, geez. He doesn't even play hockey. So.
There's not a chance Donald Trump knows anything about hockey. It's like,
so he'll get checked out. If Obi has a chance, he'll check him everywhere.
Well,
every chance. And he will never get penalized.
The story goes that Trump was a bit of a baseball player in high school and stuff, and when he got sent to military school. So I guess maybe he has some experience with athletics, but looking at him now, you wouldn't. Yeah. I don't know. Well, back then they were still playing only white baseball, so it wasn't very good. It was easy. The blackest baseball player to that point had been Babe Ruth. So
True. He's from Baltimore, of course. So.
He is from Baltimore. Just fit that one in there. Thank you. Okay, now we've come to the part of the show. It's called the Rundown. This is where I tell you about some stuff that's going on in the news. If we were professionals, it would sound a little something like this.
How about new? From Beltway Radio and beyond in Washington, D.C., I'm Emmy-nominated TV newsman and just bona fide sexual beast, J. Scott Smith. And this is the part of the show where I tell some stuff about well, maybe not me, but somebody else is going to tell some stuff about what's happening in the news. So what's going on in the news, fellas?
Thanks, Jay. All right. Here we go. You ready? I'll read the first bit. And then, Tez, if you want to get to read a few more of these news headlines here. We're trying a little bit different format where we kind of get into the punchy stuff up front. Marco Rubio went to Riyadh this week to meet with Russians about Ukraine. The meeting was specially designed to involve enough complicated places and people so as to keep Trump from having any idea that it was happening. Rubio met with Sergei Lavrov, who took a break from goat torture to explain why Russians really needed Ukraine because Italy kept messing up their DoorDash pasta orders. While in Saudi, Rubio was handed a note to pass to Donald Trump. After taking it home and having it transcribed onto a pair of boobs, Trump read it and repeated that Ukraine had, quote, invaded itself and Russia was totally innocent. The visit to Saudi stunned many. After Rubio visited Israel, the soon-to-be home of the Gaza boardwalk, Trump's plans for Gaza irked many Arab leaders as they hadn't thought of it first. While the Arab world continued to try to explain how they can't be bothered to help the 2 million Palestinian people who live in Gaza, they also really wanted to make money with the Israelis. Sergei Lavrov is what J.D. Vance does with his Lazy Boy recliner. There you go. Do you want to take on J.D. Vance stories?
J.D. Vance was in Europe this week, supposedly to address the Munich Security Conference, but instead spent the time admiring many types of seating furniture native to the continent. He took time out from stroking the chaise lounges, I believe that is the correct one. Chaise lounges, to yell at European leaders that their biggest threats weren't the Soviets, but the refusal to work with right-wing extremist parties inside Western democracies. Sounds like a recipe for fascism. European leaders were shocked to learn that someone from Ohio could make full sentences. Noted cat eater J.D. Vance continued his harangue of Europe, pointing out that many of the people over there didn't even speak English, and also the whole continent was kind of gay. He was escorted out of France after explaining to them how to pronounce croissant and sent it to the donut shop and sent pronounced with croissant and sent to a donut shop in Dayton to recover.
Media reporters assigned to cover these events and others back home have been facing a crisis of language as they continue to call it the Gulf of Mexico and misspell coup as, quote, Trump White House. The AP has been banned from the White House for continuing to use Gulf of Mexico. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt accused them of lying by doing so, citing the president's executive order and several rounds of nah-uh. Back in Washington, Elon and the Muskrats have gained access to the IRS and Social Security administrations and all their sensitive data. Several of the young Musk acolytes used the new access to pressure their parents to finally let them use the car for the weekend. One 21-year-old Doge aide was quoted as saying, quote, I thought Social Security meant being secure enough in social situations to be able to talk to girls. Turns out it's just a bunch of numbers and old people. The IRS, which is in the middle of their busiest time of year, was unprepared to be taken Doji style by Elon, but noted that if he had simply filled out the correct forms, he wouldn't have had that lien put on his evil lair. Elon's attack on the IRS gave him access to the IDRS, the system that is used to access all of the data of all taxpayers, their dependents, finances, and even their preferred McDonald's orders. Elon's friend Matt Gaetz was particularly independent in all the, quote, dependents listed.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. That's just the headlines.
Yeah.
Oh, while we've been on the air, apparently Trump's going to take over the post office.
Post office, yes. I was going to.
Which he used to hate.
Yeah.
Didn't he?
Isn't Lovejoy or DeJoy or whoever his name is still over there?
Yeah, Louis DeJoy said he was retiring this week, and I
Oh, I wonder why.
I didn't notice it as like a big deal, right? I was like, can we get him out yesterday? And then, President Donald Trump is preparing to dissolve the leadership of the post office and absorb the independent mail agency into his administration, potentially throwing the 250-year-old mail provider and trillions of dollars of e-commerce transactions into turmoil. It's gone so well with everything else that they've grabbed. Elon was like, no, it'll be fine. I'm not going to bat 1,000, but we'll fix the errors afterwards. And it's like, these errors are, you fired all the people who managed the nuclear stockpile.
I mean, you might as, North Korea, like, come get us at this point, right? Like,
yeah, it's so ham-fisted. There's so many instances, where the thing that we all know is what's going to happen. And we were all basically saying this. It's like, these guys are bad at everything, right? They're not serious. So they're just going to do like broad cuts and broad crazy shit. And it's going to impact a lot of people. And there's going to be a lot of mistakes. And we are seeing in real time, in just a week, the number of mistakes they can make in rapid succession while also being harmful. It is remarkably, it's impressive. I got to say, I had never guessed that anybody could be so dastardly and stupid at the same time. But here they are coming for the post office. Let's see. The board is planning to fight Trump's order. 3 of the people told the Washington Post in an emergency meeting Thursday. The post office board retained outside counsel and gave instructions to sue the White House if the president were to remove members of the board or attempt to alter the agency's independent status. I don't know how he thinks this is going to work. Trump's orders placed the Commerce Department in charge of the Postal Service. It would probably violate federal law, according to postal experts. Another executive order earlier this week instructed independent agencies to align more closely with the White House, though that order is likely to prompt court challenges, and the Postal Service is by law generally exempt from executive orders. It is specifically exempt from that.
Right.
It is chartered by Congress as such. I feel like this is one of these things where these guys got a little out over their skis. This one's going to be an open and shut. I mean, he got his ass chewed for the birthright citizenship thing. That was profoundly unconstitutional right away. And now everybody's going to run for a third term.
I think it just goes back to your point earlier, is that it does get to a point where, right, and I think we're already there with a few of these cases, which I don't know if we're being honest about that, but that the courts don't really have the mechanism to enforce this. And what does this look like when U.S. Marshal, whoever is asked to go do this, but is under the executive branch, and like, do people will fall in line to one of two things, right? They'll fall in line to the Constitution, or they'll fall in line to Donald Trump, and that's going to cause violence, right? That just ends up. That's what it is. It just this is 1 + 1 = 2 at this point. I don't think there's really.
Yeah,
it's only a matter of when this happens, right? Or like the protesting in the streets, right? Like, that sounds all good, but if he orders the military to mow you down. And I assume people in the military won't do that, but I'm assuming maybe there will be people who will do this. And then you get into this point then where, and then like, is there chaos in the street? Does martial law get inflicted? Are we asking the military to run into the White? I think there's no way that 4 years goes on without us ever getting to that crescendo. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think we even make it 1 year without that kind of thing happening. I think that here again, even today, Trump on Thursday raised the prospect of serving an unconstitutional third term, asking a crowd at a White House event whether he should run again and receiving audience chance of 4 more years. Now, look, he's just trolling. A lot of the time, this is the thing. This is stupid. This is not important. This is stupid. But there's a signal in the noise here, which is, he keeps calling himself a king. He keeps calling Zelensky a dictator. He keeps trying to consolidate power in these what seem like odd and obviously beatable ways, whether it's absorbing the post office, which he can't do, or trying to cancel bits of the Constitution, or challenging the courts on the impoundment stuff. But all of this is kind of, I keep saying, using this analogy, this is the velociraptors testing for gaps in the electric fence. And they're going to find it, and he's already found it with the court stuff, with refusing to comply with the court order, and then it's going to go downhill from there. I think it's only going to be a matter of time. I mean, you saw it here in the DC U.S. Attorney's Office, where a bunch of people resigned rather than work for this guy who actually was one of the people who stormed the Capitol and now is running the office that would prosecute people for doing that.
But of course,
you had all these resignations in New York with the quid pro quo and Eric Adams. And so all of them are kind of getting to this same thing that we have talked about on the show all the time, is all he's going to have to do is keep firing somebody until he finds somebody who's willing to do it. You know, are you willing to push this button? No. You're fired. Are you willing to push a button? No, you're fired. And so badly is it that, like, Emil Bovee had to go into court himself as an assistant attorney general to file the paperwork because he couldn't get any of his lieutenants to do it. There's always going to be enough. There's going to be enough collaborators, people willing to be part of this. So I think one of the quotes is you're going to have to find somebody who's either foolish enough or a coward enough to do this, but it isn't going to be me. I believe that quote is going to ride with us for a while because we're going to keep hearing that. You want to just go right to federal job cuts?
Yeah, let's keep going.
All right. U.S. Department of Agriculture said Tuesday that over the weekend it accidentally fired several agency employees who were working with the federal government's response to the what?
Bird flu.
Bird flu. Hooray! The agency said it's now trying to quickly reverse these things. Remember when we said they're going to make mistakes? It's not a good mistake to make.
They can't find these people. They can't contact. What?
So some of the government employees have been sharing like their dismissal letters, and some of them are like copy and paste. They're form letters that don't even have their right name. It doesn't have the right job title. It doesn't have the right agency. The dates are all screwy. It's one of these things, again, where because they're doing it so rushed and it's being done by people with no experience and no connection to this whatsoever, they are badly mismanaging this. Even in their attempt to be shitheads, they're bad at it. This is a good example, right? We talked about the nuclear folks sort of briefly, that they did fire all of the people who managed the nuclear stockpile, and then within a day or so realized, oh shit, none of us are nuclear physicists. We need somebody to manage this. And they tried to contact all of them, but they didn't have their phone numbers or their personal emails, and they had deleted their government emails, so they didn't have any way to access these people. It took them a week or so to get them back on the job. The same thing is true here with these are USDA. They fired all the folks at NIH and FDA whose job it is to watch, or not just NIH. I think it was, I don't know, maybe it was HHS altogether, but whose job it is to be the disease detectives. Basically, if there's something going on in a particular place, like, I don't know, say West Texas, where there's a bunch of measles, these are the folks who go in and do the epidemic analysis to figure out what's going on and how to contain it. Well, they're all on 2-year fellowships, and 2 years means that you're in probationary period. So they were just automatically nixed. I have a pretty strong feeling that eventually some of these sort of critical safety people will be asked to come back. Whether they will or not is another question.
Right.
And how much damage is done in between that time and when they get the boots back on the ground is a much more profound problem. I mean, you look at what's happened with USAID, that's a huge example of that right there.
The federal government has been forever changed already. It's just, at this point, like even in these 30 days to rectify some of this could take years. So,
yeah, it's also, I was thinking about it today as I was reading this story about all these farmers who have been stiffed because they began projects that were funded through the USDA, and then now the funding freeze has stopped and they're not getting paid for their work. And in some cases, these are things like planting cover crops to manage erosion or fixing fences along federal land. They're all pretty not like contentious stuff at all. And the farms farming in the United States has been very government dependent basically since the Depression, because crop insurance is a federal program. The SNAP program, the food stamps
Farm bill,
is part of the farm bill. It's directly set up in a way to benefit farmers. USDA is required, or USAID is required to buy all of their food aid from American farmers and ship it on American ships, even though that is the most expensive and least efficient way of delivering aid to people in country. And it also doesn't help the local economies of those countries, but that's a whole nother problem. So like farmers are very tied to this. And I started to think about that, like a lot of other people are, in a way that basically, we have understood in this country that even as administrations change, that agreements you sign with the government that might span that time frame are still honored. And
that's how you run an economy.
Yeah, right. And now if the idea is that when good guy president is in charge, things are honored, and when bad guy president is in charge, they're not, now there's no trust. And the U.S. government will no longer be able to enter into any kind of a contract or agreement with anybody, because nobody will believe that they'll actually pay or hold up their end of the deal.
Well, the prices will be much higher at that point. Like, like they're going to charge more to do, like, if they decide to go in agreement. Yeah, they're not just going to do it at yesterday's prices are now forever yesterday. And yeah, to your point, the trust is gone, and no one will.
Do you think that if, let's say, hypothetically, there's like a coup and the military, say, knocks off Trump and reinstates normal democracy, how many presidential terms will it take before the rest of the world, or even other Americans, go back to believing that the United States is good for the deals that she signs?
Depends how fast it happens, I think. And it also, the problem ends up being is what the precedent has already been, like, it's been shattered of what the executive branch goes. And I think after this, you almost will need stiffer laws from Congress, and way stiffer than anything we saw after Nixon. Like, it's just going to be a return, and we need to then, the only way out of this, honestly, outside of like the basics of like this coup portion, right? But what happens after is that Congress has to reassert its dominance as the Article 1, right? Like,
right.
It needs to, and it becomes clear and clear. And I know that people are like, well, how could that possibly happen when you look at the Congress? And maybe it happens with a supermajority. Maybe that's what it is. I know that you think that's not possible. Maybe people realize and say, maybe there are federally controlled districts, right? That the military has, things that have happened before in this country, right?
We had, occupation in the South.
Yeah, I don't know. I can only look to history, I guess, to try to figure out what this might look like. But it's clear from the rhetoric, from the actions, that, like, I mean, even the midterms, like, what does that look like?
But we're going to see what happens in Virginia in the off, which is
true.
This year coming up. So, I mean, if there is an election, I am still not convinced that that's going to happen, but we'll see. Speaking of places that don't have elections, Cambodia. So Cambodia is a small country in Southeast Asia. It is right next to Vietnam. You may remember that the United States was briefly involved in a little conflict over there. And one of the things that happened as a result of that is Cambodia was loaded up full of landmines and unexploded ordnance and all kinds of shit. And for years, decades, like, farmers have been walking through their fields and boom, blowing up. Kids are dying from these landmines. It is an absolute travesty, and it is it's got to get fixed, right? And it's a thing, it doesn't fix itself. It won't go away. They won't just sink into the earth. They will be forever dangerous. It is also going to be a problem in Ukraine when we get that all sorted out, because now that's been heavily mined. But in any case, there was a program funded by USAID to help pick up the landmines and make them safe. And guess what happened to it?
Maybe it got its budget cut, or it
got canceled.
Canceled,
yeah,
okay.
It's canceled, yeah. So there's this is over, right? So In the 50 years since the end of the Vietnam War left Southeast Asia riddled with the remnants of war, foreign aid from the U.S. has steadily funded the removal of landmines and unexploded ordnance. That life-saving work is now in jeopardy after the Trump administration ordered a 90-day suspension of all foreign aid, pushing nations in the region to turn to U.S. rivals such as
China
to fill the funding gap. Late Thursday, a U.S. judge ordered the Trump administration to temporarily reinstate foreign aid, but they haven't. They're just not going to do it. They're just not going to do the things that the court orders them to do, because you saw by the tweets, how dare a judge tell the executive branch what to do? It's like, that is what the Constitution says, J.D. Vance. Where did you go to law school again?
to Yale.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good law school.
Isn't that also DeSantis comes out of there too?
Yeah, and Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz? No, I think they know this is the I think that's the point. They know the law so well that it's that they don't care that they can plead ignorance because they know it so well, which is I think scarier. These people know the law. They definitely know the law.
Yeah.
They know the law. They do know the law.
J.D. Vance isn't even his name. Maybe he's too stupid to know anything. He doesn't know that his wife is brown. That's going to be very shocking to him when she gets deported.
Oh, God.
She also made him a vegetarian. I don't know. I mean, they're a very confused bunch over there, I think. They are. I'm not sure what which thing they're. Maybe him and RFK the 8th can hang out and figure out, which vegetables are really bear carcasses. And they can all. What the fuck are they doing over there? Very weird.
They're probably reading Kufis and Yarmulkes.
Okay. Yeah. So that's foreign aid. That's all that. Why don't we take a break?
Okay.
And then we can come back. We can do a little TES talk. I'm feeling like I'm going to learn some stuff today.
Yes.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Chip Chat on Beltway Radio and beyond.
Sweet.
Street balls.
We're in the middle of a hostile government takeover. I want to talk about it, but I'll be late for work. And if you say, wait a minute, do we have to stop this? We had one, but you didn't want that lady in office. Hostile government takeover. Hostile government. Now that we're a part of a Nigerian prince scam, surprise, surprise, it ended up being a white man. Oh, I just want to know what the hell do I do? Probably drink. And if you say, wait a minute, do we have to stop this? We had one, but you didn't want that lady in office. Hostile government. Take over. Hostile government. Late forward. Hostile government. Take over. Hostile government. Late forward. Hostile government. Take over. This ain't about left and right. You better stop messing around. This ain't about left and right. Need to worry about up and down. This ain't about left and right. You better stop messing around. This ain't about left and right. Need to worry about up and down. And if you say, wait a minute, do we have to stop this? We had one, but you didn't want that lady in office. Hostile government. Take over. Hostile government. Take over. Hostile government.
to Chip Chat here on Beltway Radio and Beyond. I'm your host, Chip. With me is Tez.
What's poppin', y'all?
I love that. I heard that the original like earlier this week, and then
I've not heard
there
that.
were remixes, and I was I'm so excited. Brian, please keep that in the rotation.
Well, it's a true song.
banger.
True song, yeah. Better than those MAGA songs we're always playing.
It's a banger.
Oh, and it's the truth.
We are, it's something about the smart lady in a pantsuit, something. Anyway, all right, Tez, what time is it?
It's what time it is, everybody. It's time for everyone's favorite segment. No, not two lies and the truth.
These dead birds.
There it is.
It is Tez Talk. There they are, the lovely blackbirds flying through the broken gray sky. All right, so it's a month. It's a specific type of month,
Yeah.
Do you have any idea of what month this is and what we celebrate this month?
I heard it's Valentine's, and we apparently celebrate really.
I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black.
Yeah,
exactly. Yes, that is what the month it is.
Black History Month.
Black History Month.
Oh,
and guess what happened? I believe actually today this happened.
It happened today.
Today. President Donald Trump marked Black History Month at the White House on Thursday by making an appearance at a celebratory reception with a surprise guest, golf legend, and sometimes Black Tiger Woods, while calling out other athletes in attendance and marveling at the size of the crowd. Trump also announced that he was going to plan to bring Alice Johnson, a prison reform advocate who he pardoned in 2020. I believe this is the woman, Kim Kardashian, I believe could have been.
That's right.
That is who she was advocating for. Because, they passed that reform bill that was really Obama's bill that they didn't pass when he was there. I mean, no one. Why are we getting caught up in the details? The White House Black History Month reception preserved the tradition, but it comes in the wake of Trump issuing wide-ranging executive orders, ending federal government's diversity, equity, inclusion programs, and has disrupted observances elsewhere. Right, so it was very interesting that they were holding this today. It's almost like Trump didn't know that he was canceling these programs, but maybe it was certain Blacks that he was bringing over.
Yeah.
As we'll come to see. Here's a quote from 47 himself. Quote, "Today we pay tribute to generations of Black legends, champions, warriors, and patriots who helped drive our country forward to greatness. And you really are great, great people." End quote.
Oh man!
Again, Trump did not mention his anti-DEI crusade as he addressed hundreds of guests in the reception in the East Room. Though he did make a reference to the New York Times' quote 1619 Project, which highlights the lasting consequences of slavery in America. Trump objected to the project during his first term, and in response, created a commission to promote so-called patriotic education, dubbed the 1776 Commission. Quote, "The last administration tried to reduce all of American history to a single year, 1619. But under our administration, we honored the indispensable role Black Americans have always played in the immortal cause of another day, 1776, Trump said. We like 1776, end quote.
What?
I'm going to get to this part because I don't need to read more of this bullshit here. Joining Trump were Black political figures and activists who have been his vocal supporters. Invited guests, according to the White House official included Republican Uncle Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, Republican Representative John James of Michigan, Alveda King, a niece of civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr., vowed author Herschel Walker, and also football legend who's Trump's choice, and U.S. ambassador to the Bahamas, and prison reform advocate again, Alice Johnson, whom he pardoned. We had other invited guests. Figures from the sports and entertainment included ESPN host and sometimes Black Sage Steele, NFL player Jack Brewer, and rap stars Kodak Black, obviously.
Yeah.
Lil Boosie and Rod Wave, according to the official who was not authorized to speak publicly and spoke on conditions of anonymity. I don't think there's much more to say on this.
There is this other thing is that he was introducing his National Garden of Heroes, and
National Garden of Heroes. Are
yeah,
they like
that's where
chia pets of people?
Yeah, basically, he is going to have statues in this garden. The garden will include statues of, here's the list: Harriet Tubman, Coretta Scott King, Rosa Parks, Billie Holiday, Aretha, Frederick Douglass. You know, had to have Frederick Douglass, who's Trump's favorite. You know, a lot of people didn't know that he was black. Booker T. Washington,
Obviously.
Jackie Robinson, Martin Luther King, Muhammad Ali, Kobe Bryant, and others.
Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Does he know?
No. He has no idea.
Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman.
Yeah, and Kobe.
Not a bad list.
I mean,
it's not a bad list.
It's not a bad list. It's got a lot. I guarantee the statues aren't going to be respectful, but
No.
it is not a bad list.
No.
Hold on. Sorry.
The Booker T. Washington thing might be a little
That's
questionable.
spot on. I get why. I know why, of course. You know,
It's one of the few Black history folks that white people know about.
I was listening to the big broadcast and they were doing a George Washington Carver, like of him going from. I'm surprised he's not in the garden. Why is he not in the garden? He should.
Why
be
is he not in the garden?
He should be in the garden. But they were
Didn't he
doing.
invent peanut butter? God damn it!
They were playing this, and they were talking like George Washington Carver going to Tuskegee Institute, and them talking to Booker T. Is like, Mr. Washington. He's like, you don't call me Mister here. It was just like it was like a crazy like sponsored by like the NAACP and like NBC News, and this is like introducing people like it's a Black History Month in like the 40s or 50s.
Oh
But yeah. Brian, what
I to me, it's like these list of people are kind of like the normal people you learn in Black History Month. It's like these like the general people, and that's it.
What about them two Facebook ladies? It could have been them.
Yeah,
Diamond and Silk.
It could have been them.
I mean, mind you,
it's down under this is HUD eliminates $4 million in DEI related grants.
Why? Like, look, I guess.
Like why? So,
yes, I don't. This is. We just live in a. I don't know what.
Hostile takeover, man.
Yes.
The hostile takeover, but yet, of course, Tiger. All those names are just so like
general. It's general names. It's someone there. He sees them on a consistent basis. He read on a consistent basis. You know, he learned, in elementary school since
Muhammad Ali is crazy to be part of this.
These are like the Black history figures that are on the placemat at
Yeah.
Like it's there's nothing specific. Like you said, they're all it's sure they're important, right?
Yes.
It's not that Rosa Parks isn't important, but I guarantee that the only narrative that people at this event know about Rosa Parks is that she was just a seamstress. They're going to call her just a seamstress who happened to be sitting on the bus that day and got asked to move and didn't. And they're not going to know
the actual history behind
that
it.
she had tried that for like weeks and nobody gave a shit, and she was trying to get somebody to do this, and she was deeply involved in the movement, and it was a planned whole thing.
This garden's also not going to get built. Why are we talking? This garden's not going to get built.
Well, I don't know that it won't be, but one of the things that kind of like struck me about this story and several others like it is that in the same way we keep talking about like collaborators, one of the things about the sort of tin pot dictator ethos is you have to do a thing that is antithetical or say a thing that's antithetical to the thing that you're doing. So while you're eliminating DEI programs, right, you're telling everybody that you're celebrating Black History Month. And while you are chopping down the trees, you're telling everybody that you are trying to grow more trees. It's one of those things where you have to be doing the opposite of the thing. Like, no, we're not starving our people. We're giving them extra bread that they have to wait in line for. It's one of those kind of things. It's very I don't even know what to call it. It's like a stupid Jedi mind trick. These are not the blacks you're looking for. That kind of
He's just stupid.
Yeah.
Oh,
Stupid.
yeah.
This guy's. I don't even think he goes like he does this month. I would just be interested to see what this is next year. What does this look like next year?
Now, here's the funny thing you kind of pointed out, Tess, is like he's doing all these things now. So pretty much you're doing it during the last week of February, and it's like you had a whole month to even think about it. I know you had other things.
He was busy.
You're very busy. So I get the fact that you want to reduce the whole month down to back to its original week. It's like, all right, I get it. So,
I think also that it's one of these things where like these things are going to happen in the first year, but then as the dictatorship moves on, this will not happen again.
Yeah, no.
And it will give him this plausible, we love the blacks. You people are, what did he say?
Hold on. No, that quote is so good. Hold on. The quote is insanely good. Hold on. It was, bear with me. Again, and you really are great people.
You really are great people. Great people. Some of the best people.
We're working on those black jobs for you.
Yeah.
We're working on those. We're clearing out the federal government.
Statues, if they ever made.
Yeah, we're clearing out the federal government to give you all some black jobs.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just all right. Let's move on to some more stupidness. This time, this one will take to the air for stupidness.
Maybe.
So I mean, you've been in this area your whole life, and there's a big plane that I have only seen flying in only recently in the last few years when I was coming up BW Parkway, and I seen it making a turn, and I was like, "What the hell?" Oh, and this is it's a really big plane that kind of hangs out of Andrew.
47, and you'd only see planes that big if you were out by Dulles, right?
Well,
These
exactly.
don't land at National.
They don't land. Yeah, you don't. Well, no plane should land there. But that's going on right now. Sorry.
About half as many planes should land there.
About maybe half. Half. But it's Air Force One, and the New York Times did it was a long story. I don't know why I had this much time. Like again, it's if you listen to the article, it'll be 14 minutes and 16 seconds.
Damn.
So right, it's a long article, but as I started reading it, I started getting engulfed in this. And I mean, it's all the big hitters, the Maggie Haberman, Jonathan Swan, Eric Lipton, Eric Schmidt, all of them come together to talk about frustrated Trump wants his new Air Force One planes pronto. And again, a very long story, so I can't give you the whole story, but the gist of it is that he is asked his first. These planes have been around, I want to say, since first Bush, right? These versions, right? Somewhere around there. They're not Reagan planes.
He was still in a 707, so it would have been Bill Jeff was the first to fly in a 747.
Okay.
I think we're on the third set because they come in pairs, right?
Right, two, right? There's the two.
We're in the third set of 47 Air Force Ones. I
assume these planes are probably they're built right in the 90s, but probably conceptualized into the 80s, right?
Yeah, well, the 747 has been around since the 1960s.
Right.
The last version of it, the last 747 to ever be assembled, rolled off the production line at the very end of 2023. So,
but the versions that they make for Air Force One.
Yeah. Air Force One is the call sign for whatever
any plane that the
president's on. But yes, so the Flying White House, as it's known, the first jet flying White House was a 707, is a Boeing 707 that Kennedy flew on, and that Johnson was sworn in on, I believe. And then it stayed being various versions of 707s all the way through Reagan and HW, and then they moved up to a 747, which is a jumbo jet. It's a substantially larger airplane, which means it can land at fewer places. It uses a lot more fuel, and all of that. The 707 that they used to use, that they had used, I think some of them are still in operation. And then the State Department and the vice president planes, official planes that they use are 757s, which is the same kind of plane that Trump's plane is.
Right. The plane that he also notes in this article has people ride on and ask them, which one do you like more? Do you like the White House issued plane or my plane, which most of his lackeys obviously say they like his Trump Force One, as he calls it.
Right.
But these planes are, as they say in the story, like they're built to dodge certain missiles. They are command centers, right? These are not just, the idea is that if there's a nuclear disaster, right, that this plane could also be in the air along with other planes, I assume, as well, right?
Right. Yeah. So 747s are giant planes. They take a long time to build, even in the most basic of configurations, even like in a freight configuration. And the systems involved in making one into Air Force One take so long to install that when Trump was speccing out Air Force One while he was in office the first time,
right,
he kind of made a point of like, this is not a plane for me. I'll never fly on it, even if I win a second term, thinking that he was going to win a consecutive second term because of how long it takes. These are 15-year projects, give or take.
So Boeing executives have indicated to the government that they might not be able to deliver the new Air Force Ones until the end of Mr. Trump's second term. But Mr. Musk, who's known for setting aggressive and in some cases unachievable deadlines at his companies, has insisted that at least one of the planes can be delivered within a year's time. The president has told associates that if Mr. Musk can fly a rocket, he could probably figure out an airplane. But Mr. Musk's role in this endeavor adds to the tally of many conflicts of interest that he now has with the federal government, right? Musk has over $2.4 billion in contracts, and this is just awarded in the past 2 years, right, with the Air Force and with SpaceX's rocket company. It competes directly with Boeing's aerospace division, right? So needless to say, there is a bunch of conflicts of interest, but now there are also, so they mentioned in this article, that there's this high-level security clearance called Yankee White, which right, that's what it is. I'm just quoting. I told you I got caught up into this story because there's a lot of good pieces in this. It's called Yankee White, and which requires a level of vetting equal to what military personnel must undergo if they're to interact with the president or the vice president, right? And that includes the Boeing employees and contractors, right? From mechanics, electricians, even those who don't work on sophisticated systems, right? Because if you think about this, if the information, like the military information that needs to also go into these planes, if someone is compromised, this is an easy way, right, to gain access. It's an easy way, right? But as Elon does, he kind of says, well, let's lower the security standards, right, to speed up the manufacturing process and, right, making it easier for Boeing to find workers, right? But again, this opens it up to espionage and spies. And then this one really scared me. It said Musk also questioned the amount of time
that's what I was going to
for flight testing of the planes, according to 3 people with knowledge of his private comments. Some current and former Pentagon officials are concerned that Mr. Trump and Mr. Musk's press for speed might compromise safety requirements for a vital national security asset. This article is very long, but there's even more because they talk about these Qatari planes that they're thinking about using, which I'm like,
no.
Or yes.
Yeah, right. Well, or yes. Right.
As long
as Vance is on there with him.
This is a choice you make. This also reminds me of another story I saw, I think right before the inauguration. We were talking about how they were so afraid of Iranian assassination attempts that they were putting people like him on decoy planes. And then people who were on the planes didn't find out until they were like on the plane, and they were like, yeah, we didn't know they might have surface-to-air missiles here in the United States, but we didn't know. Like, so we just sent them out this way. We let you guys go up. So, I mean, this and the fact that it's Boeing, and that's obviously plays into this as well. And it just seems like a recipe for disaster. Yeah, and maybe you might want to take
you really don't want Elon's version of speeding up flight testing, because
we've seen that.
Yeah, we've seen it in a billion pieces scattered across the sky. You may know that one of the reasons Elon is trying to dismantle the FAA is because they've currently got his starships grounded because they keep exploding. And yeah, he's got starships, and I want to say it's not him, right? It's
right.
Smart people who work for him have built these rockets that can occasionally land themselves and stick the landing in the chopsticks or whatever,
which is amazing. Which is amazing.
It's amazing. No question about that. But the other times they blow up a lot. And
it's almost the method of, like, if you think back to the NASA programs, right? And there were mishaps, but like those mishaps almost shut the programs down.
They did. And they required major revamps in how everything happened and how everything was done. If you think about, like, after the Columbia disaster, just to like add some context to that, right? Columbia was determined to have broken up in reentry because some of the insulation foam that covers the external fuel tank fell off during liftoff and damaged some of the heat tiles on the belly of the orbiter. After that, once they decided that they were going to put the shuttles back in operation, the only way they would let this happen is if after the shuttle took off, it would go by the space station, even if it wasn't on a mission near the space station or to do anything with the space station, roll all the way over and let the cameras on the space station like scan every single tile on the bottom of the shuttle to make sure that it could come back. This added massive amounts of complexity and time.
Billions of dollars.
Missions. It cost billions and billions of dollars. And the shuttle fleet was mostly still flying only to finish building the space station, and then it was done. That's the kind of thing where, like, if you have a mishap, you have to treat it as such. Elon's version of flight testing is kind of similar to the way I set off fireworks with my friends. I'm like, this looks like it ought to work. Let's go ahead and light it and see what happens. Worst case scenario, we got to light another one. And it doesn't, there's no like, catastrophe kind of thing where we all go, all right, well, maybe we're done now. We never do that. We just go, all right, give me another bottle rocket. That one's a dud. Give me another. Oh, that one blew up right by my head. Oh, that's cool. It's very backyard rocketry kind of thing. Look, I know a lot about airplanes in many ways. I know a lot about how this particular airplane is being done. I know that Elon went down to see where it's being built in San Antonio and apparently said that they were doing a great job. So I don't know, what the expectation here is or why there's even whining about it. Don't take the chance, obviously. But, if you're Trump, maybe you do take the chance. I don't know. I don't know.
Crazy story.
If you want to see one, by the way, I think they still have that one parked there at National Harbor. So there is a former Air Force One parked at National Harbor and set up as a tourist attraction that you can get tickets and go walk through. If you're coming northbound across the Wilson Bridge, be in the right lanes and sort of look out to your right past where the Ferris wheel is. You'll see it. So it's pretty cool, but it's massive. I mean, if you've never flown on a jumbo jet or been anywhere near a jumbo jet, especially if you're somebody who's used to flying around in what we see at most airports now, which are what they call RJs, regional jets. This thing is several
like New York to DC type of jet, right?
Yeah. it is
Ohio,
hard to really
Michigan.
explain how massive and how huge a 747 is when you go near it, and to see the size of the engines, and you can't stand far enough back to see from wingtip to wingtip in one field of view without having to turn your head. It's incredibly big. So, and I think Trump's big thing was that he was proud of the new paint job, right? Wasn't that?
Yes, there is a new paint job that they went away from the, I guess I would want to say the Kennedy blues.
That's what it was,
right? To the so this is a very more Trump Force One, red, heavy red, darker red.
Yeah, I think it has like a red stripe, and then it's like a darker blue maybe under that or something like that. Yeah, he was very proud of himself for he was showing it off because he had a model of it in his first term that he would show everybody. He's like, "Look, I designed this," and they're like, "You designed an airplane?" He's like, "No, the paint. I chose these two colors. Aren't I a genius? Very stable genius."
Very.
Maybe we should let him fly it. Speaking of which, here's a new segment, or no, I guess it's not new anymore. We've had this for a little while. This one's called "This is Stupid." Okay. Remember that we're trying to remember what's stupid and what's dangerous. So this is stupid. You know, there's a place called Argentina.
Yes.
Yeah. There's that guy. He's from there. What's his name? Damari. No, is his friend. He can't keep his stuff clean. He's a little messy. That one. Yeah.
Didn't a bunch of people flee there after some war?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. Kirchners and
right.
Okay, so Argentina is it's a country kind of, and it's gone through a fair amount of upheaval in recent decades. I think is fair to say. Massive inflation crises, dictatorships, disappearing people, Evita, lots of great things have happened to Argentina. They have a new president. His name is Javier Milei. He campaigned by running around with chainsaws. I'm not making that up.
Okay.
And he apparently cuts his hair with them. He also, I think he doesn't have kids or a wife, and he has a bunch of dogs. He's a weird dude, right?
Oh, I have something for you.
Oh, okay.
Here's the next picture for it.
Yes. Okay. I don't want to read that.
Oh, man.
I'll read it in Spanish. Si tiene cuatro patas, mueve la cola y ladras, es Milei, metiendo el perro. If it put it back, I'll translate it as best I can. Now I don't know Argentinian Spanish as well, but if it has 4 feet and it moves the tail or the butt, and it makes noise or yells, it's Milei sticking it in a dog.
Oh
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway,
you just shoot them here.
Yeah, right. Christy Nome will handle that for you. You know about the crypto, right? You're kind of an expert on technology and stuff.
Yes, I know about the crypto. It's not my thing. I'm not in it, but I do know about it.
Okay, so I'm just going to read this here. A judge in Argentina has selected Monday to investigate allegations of fraud, which is last Monday, against President Javier Milei for his brief promotion of a cryptocurrency whose value collapsed within hours of its launch last week. Milei has distanced himself from the scandal and said that he acted in good faith. He did not. Milei and his office denied involvement with creators of the Libra cryptocurrency, saying that he initially drew attention to it on Friday as an entrepreneurial project that might benefit Argentina, but learned more about it later and then withdrew his support. That is not what happened. Lawyers in Argentina filed fraud complaints against Milei on Sunday. The case was assigned Monday to Judge Maria Cervini. Yeah, there you go. They have lady judges down there. Head of Federal Court number 1 in Buenos Aires in American English and Spanish. What is it? Baseball Spanish? Buenos Aires.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a deadline to finish the investigation of the allegations. In a tweet Friday evening that coincided with the launch of the Libra crypto coin, Milei said that it was aimed at, quote, encouraging economic growth by funding small businesses and startups.
It always is.
Yeah, it enjoyed a brief spike in value of about $4 billion with a B in market capitalization. This is a country that's in a debt crisis that you have never even seen. It even just like 15 years ago, they had to like declare bankruptcy as a country and try to like get Wall Street to bail them out. So, it's great. Okay. Although its value began to decline amid comments of critics that it could be a scam, Milei deleted that post a few hours later as the value was collapsing in a downturn that caused millions of dollars in losses to many of the new investors. The coin was developed by Kip Protocol and Hayden Davis, and it could be obtained by accessing a link that directed users to a website called the Viva Libertad Project, and referred to the well-known phrase "Viva la Libertad" that Milei uses to close speeches and messages on his social media.
Oh, nothing.
He didn't know anything about it. It had nothing to do with it. The president's office said in a statement that Milei was not involved in any stage of the cryptocurrency's development and decided to remove his post to avoid speculation and limit further exposure following the public reaction to the project's launch. Okay, so this is what they call a rug pull, where you launch a currency, you get somebody important, maybe the president of the country, to tell everybody.
Tom Brady and Steph Curry, and remember when we did that?
Exactly. But the thing is that you have the people who create the currency basically still own like the vast majority of it, 80% or something in this case. And then you have everybody else try to buy it, inflate the value, and then they just dump all of their stuff immediately. And they get, all of the money, and everybody else is left holding this now worthless currency that there's way more of than anybody thought and doesn't have any real backing. And it's, of course, just a fucking beanie baby anyway.
And then they get mad because now we've created more inequity and now they're upset. And then it leads them to vote for more populist leaders.
Yeah.
Very weird. Very weird.
It does. It's self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
You want to go to another place called for people that are stupid?
Sure. Let's go there.
Kentucky, which I hear is a state. Kentucky is currently, I will point this out, underwater and snow. They have had massive flooding and massive snowstorms. They have declared a state of emergency and asked FEMA for money. Guess what?
Money?
Guess what FEMA doesn't have? Guess what FEMA hasn't given them yet or helped them with yet? They don't have any money because there's a funding freeze and can't have any money.
Hard for FEMA.
Mitch McConnell.
Born on the cob.
Who is from Kentucky? Guess what's not from Kentucky anymore?
Oh, Yum Yum Brands.
Yep. KFC is being uprooted from its ancestral home in a shakeup that was announced Tuesday by its parent company and will relocate to the U.S. corporate headquarters in Texas. Where the fried chicken comes from.
Teslix. I mean, sorry. If that's the new name, that'll be the name before long.
Texas fried chicken?
Well, no, I mean, it could be, they'll just call it Tesla soon.
Tesla. I see. Yes. Yeah. Well, no, that's those electric cars. We don't charge those in Texas. It would put too much strain on the grid, and then Teddy would have to run back to Cancun. Incidentally, I should point out that the weather report here or there in Texas this week is flight to Cancun. It's very cold there. So yeah, KFC's moving now. KFC has like a brother and sister, right? You know who its brother and sister are?
It was a Pizza Hut and Taco Bell, right?
Taco Bell.
And there's a burger spot, I think, too. I forgot.
A&W is part of Yum Brands, I believe.
Yes.
As well. Anyway, and let's see, Taco Bell and Habit Burger and Grill in Irvine, Texas. Yeah,
that's the one.
So they're in Plano and Irvine. So they're gonna be split. There's gonna be a little thing, but yeah, KFC is leaving Kentucky. I didn't realize that it made sense to move that, though. Like, why not keep the headquarters in Kentucky as long as the main headquarters is still in if you want the tax breaks, just go have the main headquarters be in Texas. What's the difference?
Maybe he doesn't want to pay it all any longer. I'm pretty sure there's something that happened that would, like, in Kentucky that says we just got to get out of there. But I mean, it is a very, like, return to get gone to Texas for a lot of the businesses. They see, like, as Texas has always been, like, before you used to go there so you could run your other business that they tried to outlaw. You know, there's another business. And now everybody's taking their actual corporate persons, you know, down to Texas, you know. So it's I don't know. It's very interesting to watch a deregulated state. And I do wonder, though, with the demographic changes, and I mean, it's not been as huge, but there's been a decent amount of people that have moved there. Like, if you see any flips end up happening there, and then these laws end up changing, then what happens? Like,
well, you've seen some progress there, and you've seen certainly places like Houston, you know, Harris County, where Houston is, has been able to really punch above its weight in some cases. The Katrina refugees definitely swamped things a fair amount there in Texas. So I don't know. I mean, there could be.
You gotta get the governor out there. It just starts there, right?
Yeah. Well, I think Governor Knowles will do a good job when she's running that place and trying to, you know, make it still business friendly, but specifically one kind of business or one color of business. I think to, you know, just to make up some ground. I think it's time for some action, maybe affirmatively, to try to help certain groups level the playing field. I hear that they love a level playing field there in Texas. That's what they say. You know why they need a level playing field, right?
Why?
Because if it was slanted, Greg Abbott would have to roll back down the other way. Anyway, moving on. So we just covered this is stupid. Now we have this is important, right? These are things that matter. A federal judge eviscerated language in Donald Trump's sweeping executive order targeting transgender service members in the U.S. military and, quote, radical gender ideology and the use of pronouns. During Tuesday's hearing in Washington, D.C., where lawyers for trans service members are challenging Trump's order that has triggered Department of Defense policy blocking gender-affirming healthcare and new trans recruits, a furious Judge Ana Reyes interrogated Trump's demeaning, biologically inaccurate, and frankly ridiculous language. Here's one of my favorite bits. She grilled the lawyers over the order's statement against shifting pronouns and usage and the use of pronouns that inaccurately reflect an individual's sex. That's what it says you're not allowed to use, right? So first she asked, would you agree that if the military is negatively impacted from the use of pronouns, we all have a lot bigger problems than pronoun use? And
right.
Like, if that's the case, quote, our military is incompetent. I can't agree to that, said the lawyer, the Justice Department lawyer. Do you think that usage of that preferred pronoun by that small group of people is going to impact our ability in combat situations? Explain to me how pronoun usage impacts military readiness, because it doesn't, because any common sense, rational human being would understand that it doesn't. Earlier, she noted that Trump's separate executive order that eliminated federal recognition for trans people inaccurately stated that there are only two sexes. This was my favorite part here. This executive order is premised on an assertion that's not biologically correct. There are anywhere between 30 intersex examples. Anyone who doesn't have an XX or XY chromosome is not just male or female. They're intersex, Reyes said. If I'm intersex, where am I allowed to go? The lawyer was like, I don't know these words. I have no idea what you're doing. And she just kind of like, she rolled it on, right? She's like, there are people who are triple X. There are people who are, like.
If you want to get down to the, like, the science, right?
Yeah, shattered X. There's so many different things here, different conditions that human beings can have that aren't just one or the other.
I've had since the beginning of time.
I've always had, right? It's just biology. Remember these guys? They love to say trust the science when it comes to that thing. When you trust the science and you look and you see, okay, well, there are people who might be outwardly female, right? They might have female genitalia, but they are XX on the inside. Their genetic sex is different than that. So like it just is an example of either they're sloppy or they're stupid or they're mean or they're all of those things.
All of them, right?
They're just not bothering to check. They just say things and then you go like, well, that's not how that works. And they go, well, it does now. And then that's how it goes. I don't know. Well, let's get to the big one.
This is dangerous because
This is dangerous.
This one's
This
dangerous.
is stupid and dangerous. Earlier this week, Donald Trump began telling everybody that Ukraine had started the war that was actually started by Russia, who invaded Ukraine. And you know that this is true because the war is happening in Ukraine. It's not happening in Russia. They didn't go into Russia. Russia moved into Ukraine.
And even the way he delivered it, you can hear the lack, how there's a lot of the stuttering going on. You know, there's been 3 years. I mean, and you know, they started it, and like it's just when sometimes he's able to lie confidently, and then sometimes it's just his delivery also shows it. But yes, this is clearly even you have Lindsey Graham on the phone actually trying to figure out like confirm like, yeah, well, yeah, you know, Trump says the darndest things, where even he knows that this is foolishness as well. And I like, it's clear what's happening, and it's like, oh, all right.
So it's starting to work though.
Yeah.
Here's what I noticed. Okay. We all saw with our very own eyes the Russians roll tanks into Ukraine. We all saw
them prepared 3 months beforehand, right?
Right. We saw them loading up 150,000 troops on the border. We all saw it coming. We all saw the drone attacks. We all saw the aircraft attacks. We saw the fight for, you know, individual cities and towns. We saw what happened in the massacres in little towns along the way.
Ukraine repelled them back.
We saw the Ukrainians fight back.
Yeah.
We saw them blow up the the Russian boats that were trying to attack them from the sea. They took down that bridge. But we all saw the war. Like, we all saw it happen in real time. It wasn't like this is
Sean Penn did a movie.
Yeah. It wasn't some far off land that we didn't know about. We saw the bombardment of Mariupol. We saw the guys hiding out in the steelworks, you know, fighting off the Russians for months at a time. We saw all of this. It was playing around the clock. Like, MSNBC got a feed from Sky News at night to cover this in real life, in real time, and we were all glued to it. And now Trump is telling everybody that Ukraine started the war and that they are somehow to blame for this. This is seeping in because I have enough contact with people who I think generally have their hearts in the right place, but are easily swayed or fooled by things because, you know, their heart basically says America makes a lot of mistakes. And then when they're presented with something that's like Russian propaganda where America makes mistakes, they buy that instead of thinking carefully about it. And they are starting to say things like Ukraine invited this. Ukraine provoked this. What Ukraine did was ask Russia not to do this and try to get themselves some sort of security from Europe and from NATO. And they did not get it. And the Russians attacked them. And now we're sort of, you know, trying to fight that off collectively as the civilized world against these barbaric Soviets who are out here trying to reestablish their empire and doing it by massacring villages of women and children.
They also started this way earlier, right?
In 2014, when they seized Crimea and a couple other little regions, with the little green men.
Didn't they do this to Georgia in 2008?
In South Ossetia and Abkhazia, yes, they did.
So it's like they've been like since 2000 in him establishing as a president. In 2008, I would probably say is that first like, oh wait, Russia's acting a little. This is the old Russia.
Little imperial.
Little imperial to 2014 to 2020. Well, I guess 2, right? Is when technically when this war starts off. This current iteration of it,
right? Trump's gone a step further, though. He's not just saying that Ukraine started the war, which they did not. Ukraine did not start this war. Russia started this war. He's also gone on to call the leader of Ukraine, who is a democratically elected president, his name is Volodymyr Zelensky. He's calling him a dictator. And he's pointing out that they haven't had an election recently. And the reason they haven't had an election is because they're in the middle of a fucking war. So
like, it's one thing to go to the ballots like with COVID, right? It's different when there are bombs falling out of the sky.
People can't vote in these kind of circumstances. Half of the population is outside of the country or internally displaced. Some parts of the country, about a fifth of it, are totally unsafe to move around in. So no, you can't have an election during that. Trump's also telling everybody that Zelensky has like a 4% approval rating. That is also not true. But there's two main things about this. One, these are Russian talking points. These are lifted directly from the kind of stuff that you hear and see on Russian state media all the time, telling this bullshit story about how Zelensky, the Jew, is a Nazi and how the Russians are fighting the Nazis in Ukraine and that the Nazis in Ukraine were belligerent and attacking Russia. None of that's real. The other sort of backward thing about this is the way Trump doubles down on things. When Trump says something that is bullshit and dangerous like this, and people react to it and say, that's not true, that's bullshit, that's dangerous, he gets encouraged to say it more and to take
louder and louder
extremes because he likes to own the libs or whatever. So now he's going further. He keeps saying this thing, despite various senators, and other administration folks having to say things like, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about or whatever. But he's living in this weird Russian information bubble. When we talked earlier about J.D. Vance carrying a message back for him to read off of a pair of boobs, this is it. This is the message. Vance was handed a note or series of notes from Lavrov, and he went back to the White House and he said, this is what they want you to say. And then he just started saying it. Because President Cockholster is in some way indebted to the Russians, whether it's the P-tape, whether it's all the finances, whether it's all the corruption and money moving back and forth. Who knows what other kind of bullshit.
He also just have a disdain for Ukraine as well. Like thinking back to why he was impeached, right? I mean, I think
tried to shake it down.
Yeah, exactly. He took a new leader and tried to shake him down, and I think that plays into this as well too. I do think even though when he met with, but then he meets with Zelensky and he's like, such an honor to me, which is the honor. It doesn't matter. It's the same as like the black people coming for Black History Month.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. Is you have to do the opposite and pretend this thing. It is very Orwellian, that kind of thing. Let's shift from Orwellian rewriting of history to dystopian torture of children. In the United States, there are several hundred, maybe thousands of unaccompanied minor migrants in this country. They have come over either with their parents who have then been deported because Trump separated them from their families, or they came over by themselves, or whatever the circumstances are. They're unaccompanied minors. And it's also worth pointing out that the immigration system in our country is what's called an adversarial system. So when you do go to immigration court, there isn't a lawyer prosecuting you exactly. It is the judge themselves whose main job is to deny you access to things that you might be entitled to by your rights. So it's very important that you have a lawyer, and a good lawyer, whose job it is to literally lawyer the judge into giving up and saying, okay, you can stay, or okay, you can have such and such a status or whatever. For a very long time, it's also worth pointing out, these things are called immigration court. They do not operate exactly the same way that we might think of as criminal court. In one very important way is you are not entitled to counsel, free lawyer. You know the Miranda rights, right? If you can't afford a lawyer, one will be provided for you. That's not how it works in immigration court. You can't afford a lawyer, you're shit out of luck. So, but one of the things that has happened is lawyers have successfully managed to sue in court to say that immigration cases are subject to the 14th Amendment, which says that everybody's entitled to equal and access and due process under the law, which has been interpreted essentially to say that the government will fund various nonprofit organizations that provide equal access and due process under the law, which in many cases means essentially lawyers. The funding freeze and the attack on immigrants in general in this country has provided the Trump administration with an opportunity to do something even more dastardly than to separate children from their parents, which is to now separate them even from their lawyers. And the Trump plan is to say that children, some as young as under a year old, no longer have the funding provided to pay for these lawyers to represent them in these adversarial courts, where they have to somehow be able to claim asylum or use complicated legalese. I don't even know what to call it. Legal reasoning to justify their case of being here in the United States. Most of them don't speak the language. Most of them, of course, don't have law degrees because they're like 4. And most of them, they don't really know what it is that's happening to them.
Right.
The groups that provide this legal services, they do things like use little dolls to sort of set up a courtroom in a little diorama to show the kids what it's even going to be like so they can even understand it. And we've had Haley, our friend, the immigration attorney, who's been on our shows several times to talk about this system where the little kids are doing things like they want to show the judge their teddy bear, or they want to talk about Bluey, or they don't understand anything about this. And to put them in a situation where they have to defend their status or how they're going to be there, which is a very life and death sort of thing. If they don't
get an unusual punishment to me, right?
Yeah, they can literally be packed in a box and mailed back to some godforsaken country where they've just escaped.
Without a guardian.
Without anybody around.
That's cruel and unusual punishment. I think it's clear. Like,
it seems that way, doesn't it? And we know that with these guys, the cruelty is the point, but this is just like, it's not enough to put them in cages. You then have to parade them through this system that they can't possibly navigate to then pack them up into boxes and ship them to far off countries.
But when I hear, like, I guess they keep checking in on this Trump voter, I forgot his name. On this Caleb was his name. It was on Here and Now earlier today. And they ask these questions and they're trying to like point out to this person, right? And I still believe, right, that this seems to be someone on the base. And I think that's these 30% of folks, 25-30% of folks are just already there. You can't convince them because like they bring up these questions. Like, well, what is he doing a great job? Well, yeah, we think that Doge is doing a great job. So one of the quotes was like, oh, these people, they're not really doing much at their jobs. And like they're bad. And again, like, right, they're battling back saying, well, no, these people, from what we see, like, they're health inspectors, right?
They're making $50,000 a year flying through hurricanes.
Exactly. But you can't convince and like, I wonder, even for a story like this, they're like, well, the kid shouldn't be here. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I don't know. Again, the courts will save us.
They will not.
I know.
They will not. Speaking of which, Eric Adams. You know who Eric Adams is?
Yeah, he's the nightlife mayor. I mean, no, that's not what he is. He's the night crime mayor. No, that's not what he is. He's a big turkey.
He is. He's a former cop. I think he was Brooklyn borough president before he became mayor. He's currently engaged in a campaign to out-sleaze Rudy, which is very impressive.
Crazy.
So basically, here's the deal. Eric Adams is dead to right guilty on this bribery and corruption stuff where he took money from Turkish investors to fix it so that even though they didn't have the fire alarms set up in their building,
exactly the story.
They could go ahead and occupy the building.
Yeah, it's exactly the story.
It's a very kind of like corrupt city crime sort of story in a way. It reads very Tammany Hall or like, machine politics kind of thing. Yeah. And So he's dead to right guilty on this, and the federal government charged him. They charged him with this. And then Trump came in, and they told him on television with Homan,
that was crazy.
The thumb-shaped guy who's in charge of immigration. He's the immigration czar or whatever they call him.
That was crazy.
Sat next to him on Fox News and said to Eric Adams, hey, we're going to drop those charges. And I don't mind sitting here with you, essentially. But, you know, if you fuck us, we're going to be back. And he said, and they're all laughing and slapping each other on the back. Kind of, it was a quid pro quo on live television in front of everybody who was watching. And so then immediately following that, right, the Justice Department announced that they were going to drop the charges against him, but not with prejudice, which means that they could reinstate the charges if he doesn't play ball with the administration.
And no, we're not dropping them because we know that we're not questioning if he did it or not.
Right.
That's not what we're questioning.
They were clear they didn't say that they were dropping the charges because the prosecution thought they'd have a hard time proving the case. They said they were dropping the charges because being charged would interfere with his day-to-day job of mayoring and running for another term.
And letting ice into Rikers, you know.
And maybe also letting ice into Rikers. So the deal has been struck very clearly that Adams is going to assist the Trump administration in deporting people from the United States who are in what is technically a sanctuary city in New York, where there isn't supposed to be that kind of cooperation.
And who got sent there because governors in other cities ended up putting them on buses.
Bussed them there. That's correct. I'm sorry. No, the word is human trafficking.
Human trafficking, excuse me.
Yes. Greg Abbott involved in human trafficking, which is what his wife calls it when he rolls around the house. So they human trafficked all these people to New York. Now they want to deport them from New York, and Adams is going to play ball unless he doesn't, in which case they'll snap the charges back in and throw his ass in jail. Now the Assistant Attorney General Emil Bove, who was supposed to be the one to get the Southern District of New York to go ahead and drop these charges. Nobody at SDNY wanted to touch this with a 20-foot pole, and
They started dropping employees.
Yep, they all quit. They said, we're not going to do this. You're not going to make a fool out of me, and I'm not going to do it. It's patently illegal. There is very definitely a quid pro quo here. We're not going to do it.
And they will be written into the history books as well, too.
Right. And Bove had to go in and basically do it himself because he couldn't get anybody willing to do it. The judge was like, hey, are you on drugs? And Adams was like, no. And then he's like, are you doing this for real? And he's like, yeah. And then the judge goes, he goes, you know, they can reinstate the charges, right? And he goes, yeah. The judge acknowledged at the start of the proceedings that he had little latitude to deny the government's request to drop the charges. I'm well aware of this, the judge said. He spent much of the roughly 1 hour hearing quizzing Bove, Adams, and the attorneys for the mayor on the implications of the government's motion to withdraw the case before concluding the proceedings without a ruling. He did not say whether they could drop the case or not. We'll find that out probably in the next couple of days. So Ho, the judge, his name is, I think, Ethan Ho, Dale Ho, I'm sorry, asked Adams whether he understood that under the government's proposed terms, the charges against him could be revived later. I've not committed a crime. I do not foresee them bringing them back, Adams said. Okay. Until Trump remembers he's black or whatever. Guy, I don't know, man. What are we doing here?
And I think it's a nightmare as well too that it's a Democratic mayor that this is happening. Yeah.
I'm not sure that anything that Adams does particularly tracks well with Democrats.
No, but still in the name, he's a Democratic black mayor. It doesn't just, even when the corruption charges happen, bad in one way, but now this kind of takes it into like a different realm.
He's a corrupt black city official.
Yeah.
That is the story that Fox News tells us is the only kind of black city officials that exists. It's a showcase. It is their shuck and jive show. Here we've got one. And then they're going to dangle this thing out and make him do more and more extreme, weird shit on their behalf until they can do two things. One, literally send him up the river to Rikers. And two, point at him as an example of this is what corrupt black officials look like.
Kathy Hochul won't remove him either. That came
Nope.
out today.
She said she's going to put guardrails. I don't know what that means.
What does that mean?
I don't know. Get David Patterson out of jail and make him watch him? Oh, he can't. He would never see that joke coming.
Oh, God.
What? He's a reprehensible sex criminal.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
You don't have to be nice to him.
That's very true.
He's also blind, but he's also
He's blind, yeah. He's blind.
Yeah. But he's a sex criminal. So
crazy.
Fuck him. But wait, better not. Okay. That brings us to the end of the show.
Oh, God. What a dismount.
No. I'm not proud of that. Okay. We want to say thank you to Alice. And talking about the Divine Space program. Thanks to our radio partners, the Department of Energy, Department of Education, and Department of Elon's mom. Thanks to NOTN for keeping us on for another week, we assume, although don't know. Thanks to our home on the interwebs, coplaymedia.com. And thanks, as always, to our family here at Beltway Radio for making us sound as smooth as NYC congestion pricing. All right, Tez, where can they get you on the socials?
You can find me on Blue Sky at DC Cortez.
There you go. And you can find the show on the Twitter, posting clips at ChipChat RR. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram at Rip ChipChat. And you can, of course, find me on Blue Sky at Chef Chip, where I will be wishing all of the anti-vaxxers a good time with their next round of the measles. And you can, of course, find us every Thursday night here on Beltway Radio and Beyond at 9:30. I'm Chip. That's Tez. Brian somewhere in the background. You've been listening to Chip Chat on Beltway Radio and Beyond.
We finished early. Swoops.
It ain't private, just public. When we have a drink in the bar, it's not beer, it's a public. It's hard to get something to rhyme with the subject. If we get famous, we can give a shout out to Brian. To get us out on time is what he'd be trying. The show is like a custom feathered avian that knows words. How can we stay late when our guest is Illy Bird? In conclusion, the message is to go out and serve folks, whether that's through art, music, or if you just tell jokes. Seek to medicate your ears, hope you eradicate your fears. Thanks for sticking with us through all these years.